Have you ever witnessed a moment so shocking that it left an entire room stunned into silence? In today's story, we follow a bright, dignified black woman named Ebony Harris, who arrives at the historic Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan, New York, only to be told that she's not good enough for the main entrance. The humiliation doesn't end there. Little do the staff know, Ebony has a secret that will shake the hotel to its core, teaching them a lesson about respect, assumptions, and how swiftly karma can strike back. Stay tuned, because by the end of this story, no one will remain the same. Ebony Harris stood on the bustling sidewalk of Park Avenue, staring up at the magnificent facade of the Waldorf Astoria, one of Manhattan's most iconic and luxurious hotels. She had visited New York City countless times, but every approach to this grand edifice still gave her a little flutter of excitement and anticipation. Her polished heels tapped confidently on the concrete as she rolled her sleek black suitcase toward the entrance. A bellhop in a crisp uniform tipped his hat at her, welcoming her to the hotel. Ebony's day had been a whirlwind. Earlier, she had been at a breakfast seminar at Goldman Sachs, and after that, a quick board meeting across town with a major philanthropic organization. Now here she was, ready for a late afternoon event that promised to be pivotal for her career. She'd been entrusted with a crucial project by her company, an entity so discreet that its name alone often held quiet power in boardrooms around the globe. Ebony had come to finalize negotiations for something so big that she had to keep it under wraps until the ink dried on the contract. For now, all anyone needed to know was that she was here as a guest. Yet, Ebony wasn't exactly a stranger to hotels of this caliber. With her job requiring extensive travel, she was accustomed to the unspoken etiquette of high-end places where good manners often disguised ruthless competition and silent judgments. But Ebony had weathered many storms in her life, and she was hardly the type to be bowled over by anyone's illusions of grandeur. She had grown up in a modest home in Atlanta and had worked her way, scholarship by scholarship, job by job, to a master's degree at Harvard. Now in her mid-30s, Ebony exuded a subtle grace and quiet strength that made her presence felt in any room. The moment Ebony stepped inside the Waldorf Astoria's sprawling lobby, she took a deep breath of that hushed opulence, an air thick with polished brass, fresh-cut orchids, and subtle notes of citrus from carefully selected diffusers. Marble floors gleamed beneath her feet. A large chandelier refracted light in all directions, imbuing the lobby with an otherworldly glow. She was used to five-star lobbies, but the Waldorf's aura still took her breath away. As she walked up to the ornate reception desk, she noticed the different staff members, their eyes assessing each new arrival. Their skill at scanning the room and measuring the patrons was near instantaneous. Ebony was well aware that sometimes people looked at her skin color and formed immediate judgments about her status, especially in an environment that was, historically, not always welcoming to people of color. But Ebony refused to let anyone's stares or silent assumptions diminish her sense of worth. She had worked too hard to get here. Then a young man in a tailored suit, his gold name badge read Andrew, caught sight of Ebony standing near the center of the lobby. He was tall, with slicked back hair, the very picture of someone who prided himself on being part of an exclusive establishment. Ebony smiled politely, expecting him to welcome her and perhaps offer assistance. Instead, he seemed to stare for a fraction too long, his expression oscillating between confusion and condescension. Finally, Andrew cleared his throat and approached. "Excuse me," he said, voice tinged with haughtiness. "May I help you?" "Yes," Ebony responded with calm clarity. "I'm checking in. I have a reservation under Ebony Harris." Andrew nodded stiffly, glancing at her suitcase. "Are you sure you're in the right place? Perhaps you're looking for the staff entrance or the service corridor." A wave of heat went through Ebony's cheeks. The insinuation was unmistakable. The service corridor was typically reserved for employees, suppliers, and deliveries. The unspoken message was clear. Andrew believed she was not the kind of person to step foot in the main lobby. Anger threatened to flare, but Ebony harnessed her composure, one of her most potent assets. "I'm exactly where I need to be, thank you," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Now, if you'd kindly direct me to the front desk, I'd appreciate it." Andrew seemed taken aback by Ebony's poised response. He blinked, apparently scrambling to maintain control of the conversation. "Oh, of course. If you'd come this way." He gestured half-heartedly toward the front desk. Ebony walked forward, aware of the hush that seemed to fall around them. The other guests passing by seemed oblivious, or at least politely uninterested in the exchange. But Ebony could still feel Andrew's gaze boring into the back of her head. She reached the marble counter and gave her name. An older desk clerk, a woman named Marisol, who had a gentle but somewhat flustered demeanor, tapped at her computer to find Ebony's reservation. "Ah, yes, Miss Harris," Marisol said. "I see you're booked into one of our tower suites, arriving today and checking out on Sunday, correct?" "Yes, that's right," Ebony said with a small smile, eyes darting over to Andrew. The look in his eyes was priceless, the shock mingled with sudden realization that Ebony was not some menial worker after all. Marisol continued with check-in formalities. Ebony calmly turned her attention to Andrew, who was now trying to hide behind a veneer of professional courtesy. "Do you have any other instructions for me, Mr. Andrew?" she asked, voice soft but pointed. "Welcome to the Waldorf Astoria," he managed stiffly. His face reddened just slightly, though he tried to maintain an air of superiority. "Enjoy your stay." Ebony gave him a polite nod and returned her focus to Marisol, who handed her the keycard. As Ebony made her way to the elevators, she felt Andrew's eyes on her, smoldering with confusion or perhaps resentment. She set her jaw. The day was just beginning, and if Andrew thought he could put her in her place by invoking old prejudices, he had no idea how wrong he was. Ebony rolled her luggage into the elevator and stood silently among 3 other guests. Her heart was pounding, though she concealed it well behind a well-practiced, calm exterior. She reminded herself that not everyone at this hotel was like Andrew. When the elevator doors slid open on her floor, a uniformed attendant stood by to guide guests. This attendant was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair who gave Ebony a genuinely friendly smile. "Good afternoon," he said. "The tower suites are this way. I'd be happy to show you." "Thank you," Ebony responded, grateful for the kindness. She remembered her father telling her when she was much younger, the measure of a person's true character is how they treat someone who can do nothing for them. This man was simply doing his job, but he did it with grace, free of judgment or assumptions. Ebony followed him down the plush, carpeted hallway, the hush of quiet wealth surrounding them. When they reached her suite, he opened the door to a tastefully appointed living area, complete with gilded mirrors, elegant drapes, and a stunning view of Manhattan's skyline. She tipped him generously and closed the door, letting out a long exhale. The encounter downstairs had rattled her more than she cared to admit. She was no stranger to microaggressions or outright discrimination. She had faced them all her life. But each incident still stung, especially in a place where Ebony was a paying guest, not an intruder. Yet Ebony refused to let Andrew's prejudice color her entire stay or distract her from her mission. She had a series of crucial meetings lined up, the biggest of which was scheduled the following day in one of the hotel's executive boardrooms. Her job? Finalize the multi-million-dollar partnership her company had been cultivating with a high-profile client, none other than a titan in the hospitality industry looking to expand internationally. Ebony was heading up the entire negotiation, chosen for her expertise in finance, real estate, and her impeccable track record in bridging cultural gaps. She had become known as the closer in her firm, the person who always sealed the deal elegantly. Still, Andrew's behavior gnawed at her. It was a reminder that success alone did not exempt her from stereotypes. She set aside her irritation, deciding to take a quick shower, change into a more casual outfit, and then explore the hotel's amenities. She wanted to get a sense of the environment before her big meeting. Stepping out of her suite a half-hour later, Ebony wore a tailored blazer over a cream-colored blouse, paired with dark jeans and comfortable but stylish flats. She made her way down the corridor and took a different set of elevators that opened onto a lounge area just off the main lobby. The lounge was lavish, with plush seating and large windows overlooking Park Avenue. As Ebony walked in, she felt a subtle hush as several patrons glanced her way, some politely curious, others dismissive. She took a seat in a quiet corner and ordered a herbal tea, scrolling on her phone to check emails. A waiter approached, polite and professional, taking her order without hesitation. Ebony forced herself to relax and take in the surroundings. The lounge was dotted with business people on laptops, a few tourists sipping afternoon cocktails, and an older couple reading newspapers. Moments later, Ebony was sipping her tea, letting its warmth steady her nerves. Her mind drifted back to her father. He had passed away years ago, but some of his stories from his youth came flooding back. He once worked as a bellhop in a grand hotel down south, saving every cent he could to put himself through night classes. He always told Ebony how the staff would be forced to use the back entrance, and how even the uniformed help had to maintain a certain posture when passing by affluent guests. Though he never let bitterness consume him, he taught Ebony how subtle slights could cut deeper than outright aggression. Ebony gazed out the window. In the reflection of the glass, she saw her own polished image staring back. It was surreal to think that she'd come this far from a shy girl in Atlanta to a leading executive negotiating deals worth millions. Yet in that reflection, she also saw the anxious, determined spirit of her younger self, the one who promised she would make a difference for people who looked like her. She checked the time. It was mid-afternoon, and she had a phone conference scheduled in an hour with her boss. Leaving a tip for the waiter, she walked through the lounge to head back to her room. That was when she saw him again, Andrew, standing near the front desk, in hushed conversation with another staff member. His expression was unreadable, but Ebony could sense the tension from across the lobby. His gaze flickered to her momentarily before he turned away. She felt a slight flush of anger. Was he discussing her with his colleague? Or was she just being paranoid? Either way, she squared her shoulders and carried herself with the quiet pride her father had instilled in her. She was here for a purpose bigger than Andrew's narrow-mindedness. That evening, Ebony decided to enjoy the hotel's fine dining restaurant, Peacock Alley. Known for its elegant ambience and refined menu, it was a place she'd heard about but never visited. Dressed in a simple black cocktail dress and wearing minimal jewelry, Ebony stepped into the restaurant, where a smartly dressed maitre d' greeted her. "Good evening," said the maitre d', whose name tag read Oscar. He was a man in his 50s with a refined manner. "Do you have a reservation?" "I do," Ebony answered. "Under Ebony Harris." Oscar scanned his list, then smiled warmly. "Ah, here you are. You're right on time. Please follow me to your table." She was led to a cozy booth near a large window that offered a glimpse of the city lights. The ambience was lovely, all soft lighting and gentle piano music. As Ebony sat, a waiter brought her a menu and wine list. While she was deciding, Oscar came by and offered to take her drink order. She asked for a glass of sparkling water to start. Moments later, as she was studying the menu, she noticed a figure hovering near the entrance of the restaurant, Andrew. Instantly, Ebony's guard went up. But Andrew, rather than coming her way, approached Oscar. The two of them spoke in hushed tones. Oscar glanced at Ebony, then nodded at Andrew. Ebony could almost see the tension in Andrew's posture. After a moment, Oscar parted ways with Andrew and walked briskly to Ebony's table. He offered a polite bow of the head. "Is everything to your satisfaction so far, Miss Harris?" "Yes, thank you," Ebony replied. "Is there a problem?" Oscar's face flushed. He looked momentarily flustered, as though he was caught between loyalty to the hotel staff and genuine concern for Ebony's experience. "I hope you'll accept my apologies, but Mr. Andrew is on duty tonight in his capacity as assistant front of house manager. He mentioned you had a reservation for tomorrow's meeting. He wanted to ensure everything was in order." Ebony gave a tight smile, not entirely convinced. "I appreciate the thoroughness. Everything is fine, thank you." Oscar seemed to hesitate, then spoke quietly. "Should you need anything, please let me know directly. We value your comfort." Ebony realized he was offering a subtle courtesy that might be his way of compensating for Andrew's behavior. She nodded graciously. "Thank you, Oscar. I'll keep that in mind." Satisfied, Oscar retreated, and Ebony turned her attention back to the menu. Yet her concentration was disrupted again when she felt someone's presence at the edge of the table. She looked up to see a woman in a navy blue suit, probably in her early 40s, with a warm but concerned expression. She extended her hand politely. "Good evening, Miss Harris. My name is Margaret Williams, the first one of the hotel's guest relations managers. May I sit for a moment?" Ebony, half surprised, gestured for her to take a seat. "Of course." Margaret eased into the chair opposite Ebony, folding her hands in her lap. "I just wanted to apologize personally for any inconvenience or misunderstanding you may have encountered today. We pride ourselves on offering impeccable service to all our guests. If there's anything that you felt was unprofessional or discourteous, please let us know." Ebony took a measured breath. She considered brushing it off, but something about Margaret's earnest tone encouraged honesty. "Thank you for your concern. Let's say I had an awkward interaction with Andrew earlier. He mistakenly presumed I should use the service entrance. It was insulting." Margaret's face fell, and she bowed her head momentarily. "I'm truly sorry. That is not the experience we want for any guest, let alone a guest in our tower suites. I've already spoken with Andrew. I believe he understands the severity of his mistake." She paused. "May I ask if you're planning a long stay? We'd like to ensure your comfort throughout." Ebony nodded, recounting her schedule. "I'll be here through Sunday. I have a major meeting tomorrow in your executive boardroom. After that, I'll be attending some philanthropic events around the city. Then I fly out on Sunday." Margaret offered a conciliatory smile. "We appreciate your patronage. If you need anything, whether room service, spa reservations, anything at all, please contact me directly." She handed Ebony a business card. "Thank you, Miss Williams." "I appreciate that." With her apology extended and Ebony's acceptance, Margaret stood. "Enjoy your dinner. And again, we're grateful you've chosen the Waldorf Astoria." After Margaret departed, Ebony had to admit she felt a bit of relief. The hotel was taking notice. Perhaps Andrew's prejudices wouldn't go unchallenged. She took the chance to order her meal, pan-seared salmon with a side of sautéed spinach and roasted potatoes, along with a glass of white wine. As she dined, she tried to push aside the day's tension and focus on the sumptuous flavors. But every so often, she'd glance around and catch glimpses of Andrew lurking in the periphery of the restaurant watching. By the next morning, Ebony woke early, determined to be at her best for the high-stakes negotiation. She had done all her homework, memorized every figure, every potential hurdle, every possible angle. She'd also prepared an emotionally resonant pitch. Hotels like the Waldorf Astoria thrived on prestige, image, and heritage. Ebony's company specialized in modernizing classic structures while preserving their historic charm. Her final pitch would revolve around bridging the gap between old-world elegance and contemporary global demands. Dressed in a charcoal business suit and a soft pink blouse, Ebony made her way down to the second-floor boardroom area. This corridor was reserved for conferences, discreet negotiations, and VIP gatherings. Plush carpeting absorbed the sound of footsteps, and the lighting was subdued to cater to businesslike concentration. Ebony found the designated boardroom and discovered that hotel staff had already set out coffee, tea, and light refreshments. Inside, Ebony's colleagues, Jordan and Maria, were already waiting. Jordan was the vice president of acquisitions, an affable man with a quick wit. Maria, Ebony's longtime friend and co-worker, was a top legal counsel who specialized in property acquisitions and mergers. Both greeted Ebony warmly, each sensing her readiness for the day. "Ready to slay?" Maria joked, adjusting her glasses. "We've got this." Ebony gave a confident nod. "Absolutely." Soon, the individuals on the other side of the table arrived, executives from an international chain that owned properties across Europe and Asia. Their lead representative was a reserved man named Darius Song, who Ebony had met once before at a conference. He was known for his keen eye for undervalued heritage properties that could be transformed into global hotspots. After the usual formalities and exchanging of business cards, everyone settled in. Ebony led the presentation, her voice steady, each slide meticulously crafted. She spoke about market shifts, brand synergy, and the uniqueness of revitalizing a historic American brand for international audiences. Ebony could sense the room's energy aligning with her words. Even the initial skeptics among the visiting executives nodded thoughtfully as she walked them through the financials and growth projections. Mid-presentation, Ebony's phone vibrated softly in her jacket pocket just once, the discreet signal that she had an urgent message. She resisted the urge to check it. Nothing was more important than this deal right now. She continued, fielding tough questions with aplomb, demonstrating how her company could offer an immediate infusion of capital and brand expertise, while preserving each property's local heritage to maintain authenticity. When Ebony finished, the visiting executives engaged in a hushed conversation in their own language. Maria and Jordan exchanged hopeful glances with Ebony. Eventually, Darius cleared his throat. "Thank you, Miss Harris. Your presentation was excellent. We need to confer among ourselves for a bit. Would you mind stepping out for a moment?" "Of course," Ebony replied graciously, her heart pounding with adrenaline as she, Jordan, and Maria exited the room. Outside, they took seats on a nearby bench. Jordan whispered, "You nailed it." "I saw them nodding at all the right spots." Maria grinned. "If they don't sign after that, they're crazy." Ebony allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "Let's not pop champagne just yet." But, yes, it felt good. She pulled out her phone to check the urgent message. It was from her boss, Ebony. "Everything rests on you. Close this and the board will be thrilled." Might want to touch on philanthropic angle if they're on the fence. Good luck. 15 minutes later, the door opened and the executives invited Ebony and her colleagues back into the boardroom. Darius Song spoke on behalf of his team, his expression measured but with a hint of admiration. "Your proposal is compelling. We have a few conditions and points to clarify, but we're prepared to move forward." Ebony's chest filled with relief and excitement. "Wonderful. We're open to hearing your conditions." They spent the next hour working through the finer details, with Ebony skillfully navigating each negotiation point. By the end, they had a preliminary agreement that was near definitive. Legal documents would follow shortly. Once the meeting adjourned, Ebony walked with her colleagues out into the hallway. Jordan patted her shoulder. "Congratulations, Ebony. You just sealed a deal worth millions." Maria smiled from ear to ear. "I'm so proud of you. This is going to change the game for us." Ebony was about to respond when she felt a presence behind her. She turned to see Margaret Williams, the guest relations manager. Margaret approached with a look of genuine delight. "Excuse me for interrupting, but the front desk let me know you had an important meeting." "How did it go?" Ebony couldn't contain her excitement. "It went very well. We have a preliminary agreement." Margaret's eyes shone. "That's wonderful. Congratulations. The Waldorf Astoria is honored to have hosted such a successful meeting." She hesitated. "I also wanted to let you know that a certain staff member has been spoken to. We take these matters seriously, Miss Harris." Ebony nodded, feeling a sense of validation. "Thank you." Margaret offered her congratulations once more before disappearing down the hall. Ebony, Jordan, and Maria collected their materials and made their way back toward the lobby. Ebony felt lighter than she had in days. With the negotiation behind her, Ebony finally had space to breathe. Later that afternoon, she found herself wandering through the hotel corridors, curiously exploring corners of the Waldorf Astoria she hadn't yet seen. She paused by a large black and white photograph displayed in a hallway near one of the ballrooms. The photo, taken decades ago, showed the hotel staff from a bygone-era chambermaids, cooks, bellhops, all posed stiffly in their uniforms. Ebony moved closer to see if the photograph identified anyone. No names were listed, just a date, 1935. Her mind drifted to her father's stories again. He might have worked in a place like this if he had been born in another era. Ebony felt a pang of empathy for the people in the photo. How many of them had faced discrimination in that era, forced to use the back entrances, given lesser pay, smaller tips? Before she realized it, she had spent nearly an hour meandering. Deciding to freshen up before dinner, Ebony headed toward the elevator bank. She was steps away when she heard a familiar voice echoing through a side corridor. "Look, I'm just saying, that woman's presence here is messing things up. She's got everyone on edge." Ebony froze. The voice belonged to Andrew. He was speaking on a cell phone, presumably unaware that Ebony was within earshot. She edged closer, the sound of her heartbeat in her ears. Andrew continued, "Margaret wants me to apologize? For what?" "Doing my job. I mean, if she doesn't belong in the front, I have every right to point her to the service entrance." Ebony felt her blood run cold. She leaned around the corner just enough to see Andrew pacing. He seemed agitated. "It's not about the money," Andrew said. "She's got some big negotiation going on here, like she's a real VIP. She's probably just fronting for someone else. Whatever. I'm not going to grovel at her feet just because she's..." He paused as though the person on the other end was cautioning him. Then Andrew hissed, Yeah, I know. Margaret said if I don't shape up, they'll put me on probation or something." He paused again, then spat out, "I'll keep my eyes on her. Who knows what she's really up to?" With that, Andrew cut the call. Ebony stepped back, pressing herself against the wall, her heart pounding. Andrew's words confirmed her suspicions. He wasn't merely ignorant, he was willfully prejudiced. It wasn't that he simply made a mistake, he truly believed Ebony didn't belong. Worse, he sounded like he wanted to cause trouble. Ebony steadied herself. She had no intention of letting Andrew's hatred overshadow her accomplishments or sabotage her stay. As quietly as possible, she slipped away before he could see her. Once in the elevator, Ebony leaned against the back wall, inhaling a deep breath. A swirl of emotions enveloped her: anger, sadness, a renewed sense of resolve. By dinner time, Ebony had regained her composure. She'd decided to dine outside the hotel that evening to clear her head. She took a cab to a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village, one that Maria had recommended. Over a comforting plate of pasta, Ebony allowed the swirl of the day's events to settle. The deal was practically in the bag, which was a triumph, but Andrew's vendetta lurked like a storm cloud. She returned to the Waldorf Astoria later that night, stepping into the lobby with her shoulders squared, determined not to let Andrew's attitude define her stay. To her relief, the desk was manned by another attendant, an older gentleman Ebony hadn't seen before, who greeted her warmly. She walked toward the elevators, but from the corner of her eye, she spotted Andrew standing near a large potted plant, apparently scanning the lobby. The moment their eyes met, Ebony looked away. She refused to feed his hostility with further interaction. However, as she was about to step into the elevator, she heard the click of polished shoes behind her. Andrew's voice, low and confrontational, whispered from just behind her shoulder, "Busy night? You must have better things to do than roam around here." Ebony turned slowly, pinning him with an even gaze. "Excuse me?" Andrew gave a patronizing smile. "Did you enjoy your evening out? Perhaps checking up on the competition?" Ebony's pulse soared. "I don't know what you're implying, but I suggest you choose your words carefully. I'm a guest here." He folded his arms, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, I know you're a guest, Miss Harris. But not for long, right? I'm sure you have somewhere more appropriate to be." A flush of anger washed over Ebony, but she held herself in check. "My business is none of yours. If you're smart, you'll walk away." She stepped into the elevator and pressed her floor button. He didn't enter the elevator. Perhaps he knew better than to trap himself in a confined space with her. Instead, he stood outside, his sneer unwavering. As the doors slid shut, Ebony's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't frightened exactly, but deeply unsettled. Andrew's animosity went beyond casual prejudice. He was watching her, suspicious and hateful. It struck Ebony that he might be capable of more than just hurtful words. Around midnight, Ebony was in her suite, reviewing emails on her laptop. Jordan had messaged her about the next steps with the contract, basically an entire list of action items that Ebony needed to sign off on. She was about to respond when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Thinking it might be related to work, she answered. At first, there was only silence on the other end, then a voice, muffled and slightly distorted. "You should watch your back." Ebony's stomach twisted. "Who is this?" No reply. The line went dead. Her heart thundered. She immediately checked the number in her call logs. No details available, just unknown. She set the phone aside and pressed a hand to her forehead. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. Could it be Andrew? Had he escalated to harassment? Or was it a random crank call? Ebony couldn't be sure, but the malice in the voice was undeniable. Gathering her composure, Ebony reminded herself she'd faced worse obstacles in her life. She considered calling hotel security or Margaret Williams, but what would she say? She had no proof who made the call. Instead, she chose to lock her suite door, slip the security chain in place, and keep her phone nearby. If Andrew really intended to threaten her, she'd be ready to report him. As Ebony turned off the main lights and lay in bed, she promised herself she wouldn't let fear overshadow her triumph. Yet sleep eluded her that night. That restless night dredged up a memory from Ebony's teenage years. She was 15, walking down a sidewalk in Atlanta with a friend when a car slowed. A group of teenagers inside yelled racial slurs, throwing half-eaten food at them. Ebony had been petrified, frozen in shock and humiliation. It was a turning point. She understood, viscerally, that no matter her achievements, some people would hate her for her skin color alone. The next day at school, she recalled telling a teacher about it. The teacher had asked gently, "Do you want me to call your parents?" Ebony had declined, afraid to worry them, but her father found out anyway. He'd held Ebony's shaking hands in his own, his voice calm and steady. "We can't control what they do, Ebony, but we can choose how we respond." And she responded by pouring her energy into academics, student government, and volunteer work. She resolved to excel so powerfully that her accomplishments would dwarf any bigot's attempt to belittle her. Now, years later, that determination remained. This time, Andrew was the hateful driver, and Ebony was the unshakable force, prepared to stand tall. The next morning, Ebony rose early, fueled by coffee and a renewed sense of resolve. She had a scheduled meeting with Margaret Williams to finalize some event details at the hotel, a potential philanthropic event Ebony's organization was considering hosting. Perhaps ironically, Ebony's group wanted to partner with certain historic hotels to raise funds for community programs. If all went well, Ebony planned to propose that the Waldorf Astoria host a future gala benefiting underprivileged youth, something that would bring Ebony's personal story full circle. As she exited the elevator, Ebony spotted Andrew behind the front desk, scanning the morning crowd. Rather than allowing him to intimidate her, she let her eyes pass over him as though he were invisible. The moment Andrew noticed her, she saw a flicker of, was it fear or anger? Ebony couldn't tell. In any case, he didn't approach her. She marched to Margaret's office with her head high. Margaret greeted Ebony warmly, gesturing toward a chair. "Good morning, Miss Harris. Thank you for meeting with me. Please, call me Ebony." She settled into the seat across from Margaret's tidy desk. Margaret smiled, nodding graciously. "Ebony, I've set aside some sample brochures, floor plans, and pricing options for corporate events and galas. Our ballroom can accommodate up to 1,000 guests for a banquet-style event." Ebony nodded, flipping through the materials. "This looks wonderful. I'm particularly interested in the philanthropic angle. My organization is considering hosting a charity gala next year to support college scholarships for underprivileged students." Margaret's eyes lit up. "That sounds marvelous. The Waldorf Astoria has a long tradition of partnering with philanthropic organizations. We've hosted the Heart Foundation Ball, the UNICEF Snowflake Ball, and numerous other high-profile events." Ebony recognized some of these real-life events. This was part of the hotel's storied legacy. She found herself momentarily awed by the possibility that her own organization could add its name to that list. She told Margaret about her personal connection to such initiatives, how her own scholarships paved her path to Harvard, how she believed in giving back. Margaret listened intently. "Ebony, I must say, your story is inspiring. I'd be honored to help you coordinate this if the Waldorf Astoria is chosen as your venue." Before they could discuss further details, there was a knock on Margaret's door. A hotel employee Ebony didn't know peeked in, whispering something urgently. Margaret's expression shifted to concern. "Pardon me, Ebony, apparently there's an emergency with a water leak near the spa level. I need to attend to it. May I leave you with these materials?" Ebony stood. "Of course." "Thank you for your time, Margaret." Margaret left in a hurry. Ebony paused a moment, flipping through the event brochures. She imagined the possibility of 100 deserving students benefiting from the gala's proceeds. Her heart swelled at the thought. She decided to gather her things and head toward the spa level. As well, she'd heard wonderful reviews about the spa services, and maybe she needed some relaxation. Stepping out into the hallway, Ebony rounded a corner and nearly collided with Andrew. He was in the corridor, fiddling with his phone. The moment he saw her, he pocketed the device and sneered. "In a hurry?" he asked, voice laced with sarcasm. Ebony stared at him coolly. "I have nothing to say to you." As she tried to step around him, Andrew moved to block her path. "But I have something to say to you," he hissed. Fear flashed through Ebony, but she refused to shrink. "You need to back off." "Oh, is that so?" Andrew leaned in. "You think you're so important, parading around like you own the place, making everyone bend over backwards. You're just taking advantage of the hotel's hospitality, spouting your self-righteous charity nonsense." Ebony's patience snapped. "First of all, I'm not just a guest. I'm here on official business, and my dealings with this hotel are none of your concern. Second, if you have a problem with me, Take it up with your manager. Andrew's face twisted with contempt. That's the problem. Margaret's coddling you. You're manipulating everyone here with your phony sob stories so you can wave your checkbook around. I've seen it before. Ebony felt an anger so intense it made her tremble. She took a deep breath. I have no idea what your problem is, Andrew, but you're on very thin ice here. This hotel prides itself on service and reputation. Your behavior runs counter to everything it stands for. At that, Andrew seemed to falter. For a moment, Ebony glimpsed a flicker of fear behind his bravado, as though he knew she was right. But then he squared his shoulders again and hissed, "We'll see how powerful you really are. Some people just don't belong here, and you're one of them." Ebony clenched her jaw, refusing to engage further. With a firm push, she sidestepped him, striding down the hall. As she turned the corner, she heard him mutter a curse behind her, but she kept going without looking back. Her heart thundered in her chest. She needed to report this. Enough was enough. Ebony wasted no time. She went straight to Margaret's office, only to find it empty. Margaret was still dealing with the leak. Next, Ebony made her way to the general manager's office, situated near a VIP check-in area. She'd never met the general manager, but this was no longer a matter of courtesy. It was a matter of safety and principle. The general manager, a distinguished-looking man in his late 50s named Winston Brooks, listened to Ebony's account with grave attention. He asked for clarification on exactly what Andrew had said and how he had behaved. Ebony told him the truth without embellishment, but her trembling voice revealed the emotional toll. When she finished, Brooks released a long breath. "Miss Harris, I am deeply sorry. This is not who we are as a hotel or as a brand. I promise you, we will take immediate action." He rose from his chair. "Let me find Margaret. We'll handle this together." Within minutes, Margaret appeared, her cheeks flushed from dealing with the spa's emergency. Once informed of the situation, her face paled, and she offered an immediate, heartfelt apology. "Ebony, I cannot express how sorry I am. Andrew's behavior is unacceptable on every level." Winston Brooks nodded, his tone firm. "We will suspend Andrew pending a full investigation. I also want you to know we take any threats, verbal or otherwise, extremely seriously. If you feel unsafe, we will provide additional security." Ebony felt a twinge of relief. At last, Andrew's harassment would be addressed. She glanced at Margaret. "I appreciate that. I've also received a threatening phone call from an unknown number. I have no proof it's Andrew, but in light of his behavior," Margaret's eyes widened. "I understand. We'll coordinate with our security team. They can review phone records, camera footage, anything that might help. Please, Ebony, let us know if there's anything else we can do." Ebony nodded gratefully, 1,000 emotions coursing through her. "Thank you. I'd prefer to keep things discreet, but I need to feel safe here." Winston Brooks assured her, "We'll handle everything as discreetly as possible. And Miss Harris, again my sincerest apologies." With that, Ebony left the office, her heart a bit lighter. Andrew's harassment might finally come to an end. She just hoped the resolution would be swift and decisive. She had more important things to focus on, like finalizing the big deal and investigating the possibility of hosting her charity gala here. Ebony couldn't let one hateful person overshadow the good she planned to do. Ebony tried to carry on with her day, meeting with her colleagues and reviewing the final terms of the contract. However, by late afternoon, Margaret called her to say they had questioned Andrew, who denied everything. He claimed Ebony had been aggressive with him, twisting the story. But Margaret was unconvinced. Andrew's record already had minor notes of complaints from other guests, in the past discreet references to rude behavior, though none as serious as Ebony's complaint. While the investigation continued, Andrew would be relieved of his duties indefinitely. That evening, Ebony prepared for a celebratory dinner with Jordan and Maria at a high-end sushi restaurant. She felt a sense of justice, though the day had been draining. As she left her room, she noticed a small envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a folded note with cut-out letters from a magazine or newspaper, arranged to read, "You'll regret this." Ebony's pulse raced. She stared at the note, her hands trembling. The cut-out letters were a cliché method used in anonymous threats, but it revealed the seriousness of the intimidation. Someone was going to great lengths to rattle her. Could Andrew have done this, even under suspension? Shaken, Ebony grabbed her phone and dialed Margaret. When she explained the note, Margaret insisted on sending security personnel to Ebony's room immediately. She also promised to contact Winston Brooks. Ebony cancelled her dinner plans, uncertain if leaving the hotel was wise. Within minutes, a security manager named Neil arrived. A tall man with an authoritative presence. He examined the note carefully. "We'll look into this, Miss Harris. We'll check camera footage on your floor. We take these matters very seriously." Ebony felt relief that at least the hotel staff was prompt in taking action, yet anxiety gnawed at her. She was a paying guest who'd come here to do business, not to navigate a labyrinth of threats. She sank onto the edge of her bed, stomach in knots, wondering how things had escalated so far. The next morning, Ebony met with Margaret in the hotel's security office. Neil had spent much of the night reviewing camera footage. "We didn't see Andrew on your floor last night," he reported. "We did see a figure in a hoodie pacing around, but we can't identify their face. They slipped the envelope under your door around 9 p.m. "That could be anyone," Margaret muttered, looking troubled. "We don't have any reason to believe Andrew is staying here. He's been ordered off the premises." Ebony's stomach twisted anew. "So it might be someone else entirely." Margaret turned a sympathetic gaze on Ebony. "Is there anyone else who might want to intimidate you?" Ebony considered it. She had plenty of professional rivals, but none that would stoop to this. She shook her head. "I can't think of anyone, unless someone is trying to sabotage our big deal, but that feels far-fetched." Neil closed the security file. "We'll increase patrols on your floor, and we'll have a staff member escort you if you need to move around late at night. Just let us know." Ebony nodded, gratitude mingled with unease. "Thank you." After the meeting, Ebony went to a side lounge to gather her thoughts. She was just about to call Jordan and Maria when Margaret appeared, quietly taking a seat next to her. "Ebony, I'm so sorry this is happening. We've never had such an incident in all my years here." Ebony looked at her, eyes weary. "I believe you. I appreciate your support, truly. It's just frustrating and scary." Margaret reached out to pat Ebony's hand lightly. "I wanted to let you know something, though it's confidential. The management had a meeting about Andrew. We suspect he's dealing with personal issues, perhaps an addiction or debt, which might be fueling his anger and paranoia. It doesn't excuse his behavior, but it may explain why he's latched onto you as a scapegoat." Ebony sighed. "If that's true, I hope he gets help. But I can't let his issues ruin my business here." Margaret nodded. "Absolutely. We're prepared to protect you and your interests, Ebony. And we still hope your organization will consider hosting that gala here. We want to prove to you that this place can stand for inclusivity and respect, not bigotry." Ebony's chest tightened with mixed emotions. She wanted to believe in the Waldorf Astoria's better nature. She had already witnessed kindness from Margaret, Winston, and others. "I'm not giving up on that idea, but I have to ensure my safety first." Margaret nodded solemnly. "Understood." Chapter 13, The Unfolding Karma. 2 days later, the hotel's investigation concluded. Margaret and Winston Brooks summoned Ebony to a private conference room. Seated around a polished table, they presented her with the findings. Andrew had been behind at least one earlier incident, where Ebony found a snide note slipped under her restaurant bill, but they couldn't definitively link him to the threatening phone call or the letter with cut-out words. However, Andrew had left enough digital footprints, messages, phone logs, and eyewitness accounts that proved a pattern of harassment. Winston Brooks spoke gravely. "We've terminated Andrew's employment, effective immediately. We're also issuing a restraining order. He's not allowed on hotel property, nor to contact you in any way." A surge of relief coursed through Ebony. "Thank you. I appreciate everything you've done." Margaret, looking both relieved and sad, added, "He was given the opportunity to explain himself, but the evidence is overwhelming. This is our final decision." That afternoon, word spread among the staff that Andrew was gone. A hush of gossip fell across the hotel, with employees exchanging glances whenever Ebony walked by. Some were curious, others seemed supportive, nodding politely. Ebony tried not to revel in Andrew's downfall, but she couldn't deny feeling vindicated. He had sown hatred, and now he was reaping the consequences. With Andrew gone, Ebony's last day at the Waldorf Astoria was surprisingly peaceful. She completed her final contract obligations with Jordan and Maria, ensuring all the I's were dotted and T's crossed for the multi-million-dollar deal. They celebrated quietly in her suite that evening, sipping champagne that Margaret personally delivered. The note accompanying the champagne read, "You are always welcome here, Margaret." As Ebony prepared to check out the following morning, she found a moment to wander the lobby one last time. She paused at the same spot where Andrew had first insulted her, telling her to use the service entrance. In the bustle of morning checkouts, no one seemed to pay her any mind, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She smiled, acknowledging how far she had come, not just in this hotel, but in her life. Once, she was a little girl from Atlanta, burning with ambition. Now she stood as a top executive who had just secured a landmark deal. Margaret approached, offering a warm handshake. "We can't wait to host your gala, Ebony." Ebony returned the handshake, her eyes bright with promise. "I'll be in touch soon with final arrangements. Thank you, Margaret, for everything." With that, Ebony took a last, lingering look at the grand lobby before stepping through the entrance. Yes, the main entrance, rolling her suitcase behind her. No one could ever make her feel she didn't belong again. Thank you for joining me for this dramatic story of prejudice exposed, a fierce confrontation, and ultimately, powerful redemption. Ebony Harris's unwavering courage, combined with the support of the right people, transformed what could have been a tragedy into a resounding triumph. By refusing to be underestimated, Ebony taught us that true success isn't just about closing big deals, but about staying true to our dignity in the face of ignorance. Her story reminds us that compassion and respect matter, and that karma always comes for those who sow hatred. If you found Ebony's journey as uplifting and thrilling as I did, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring and powerful stories to life. Together, let's spread more empathy, more understanding, and more justice, one story at a time. Thank you for watching.